what's a habit and how do we get into them?
Sure, that's a really good question. So a habit is a behavior that we engage in that's non-effortful. So it's something that's really natural. We don't have to take a lot of extra time or energy to think about how we're going to do it, if we're going to do it, or why we're going to do it. It's almost automatic. And in terms of forming a habit, good or bad, in the kind of popular culture, there's this idea that it only takes 21 days. Well, I did some research, and that's not actually the case. In order to get to that non-effortful, totally natural place, it actually takes a little over 2 months to get there.
So many of us are picking up some new habits. Is that surprising?
Yes and no. Yes, because, for those of us who are adults, we have been working and or in school or a combination of, all of these things. And so we have a certain kind of groove Monday to Friday. So in some ways it's like, well, we're still having to work, those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to work from home. So, why would that be different? But on the other hand, we're sheltering at home, where a lot of people who work remotely often say it's not as easy as it looks, because there's all of these other distractions and other things that you might do with your time. And if you've got a flexible job, what's to say you couldn't do it at 2 a.m. as opposed to the 9 to 5? So there are ways that it's kind of strange that it's different, but ways that it makes sense that we're doing things differently.
If we've picked up a good habit, how do we incorporate that once our reality and our environment starts to change back to sort of what it used to be?
Yeah, I think that when we have picked up good habits, whether that is more exercise or better sleep or those sorts of things, it's because in this moment where kind of all of the cues have changed, we start to think about, well, what's important? What helps me to keep going? And so if that daily exercise has helped you to keep going, then that needs to be really an important priority. So that might mean that when you add in your commute again, that maybe there's a little less Netflix, or maybe it's, I really do end my day at 6 o'clock because I need the 20-30 minutes to move my body. I feel better. And so it's still important. So I'm going to make room for it now that I know how important it is.
Because people who say they don't have time have found that you can make time for things that are important to you.
Exactly. And I often like to tell my clients, it feels like we're living life backward, where we say, okay, let me, run all these errands and get to work and, run the kids around and everything else. And if I have any time left, maybe I'll exercise, maybe I'll sleep. Whereas, the exercise and the sleep is what makes us able to live our lives in a way that's satisfying. So maybe put the horse before the cart.
Now, what about the bad habits? What about the stress eating, or people like to call it quarantine eating? Because they're craving different things and new things because they are at home and food is so accessible to us. So what about those things, and how do we break those bad habits that we've picked up?
Well, some of it is also cues, because for those of us who will be returning into a typical work environment, I'm not going to be able to go downstairs in my jammies and open the fridge at 2 o'clock in the afternoon the way I could at home, right? So there is going to be some benefit from returning to a more traditional work environment. And then it also kind of becomes some comfort of, no, life is not going to be exactly the same as it was a year ago, but the level of stress that we feel because we don't know when this is ending, that might start to lift a little. And so our desire to kind of overeat or eat the comfort food might go down. But then there's also an aspect of, okay, I'm needing to do something to break the stress or the monotony. What else could I do that would actually meet my need? Because these Oreo cookies, as yummy as they are not actually going to help me feel better and think about this differently. So what could I do instead? Some mindfulness, talking with a friend. So thinking really carefully about how to actually meet our need.
The word normal. because
Mm.
explain to me why that word can make it difficult for people um, to go about their everyday lives in their current environment.
Well, first of all, I also kind of have a problem with the word normal, because what is that really? We're all so different. Our circumstances are different. And so in psychology, we kind of talk about a range of adaptive or functioning behaviors where we're not in danger or having difficulty, and we're not causing danger or difficulty for other people. So that would be okay, to kind of have that range.
My issue with the word normal is it sort of makes us compare ourselves to something that we don't necessarily like. We're all different. My normal is different than your normal. Even when it's a healthy normal, it's still different for everyone, right?
Yes. And there's this really great thing going around on social media about how, based on our circumstances and also who we are, that we're experiencing this shelter at home, safer at home, very differently. And so if I look at someone who is baking bread and learning a new language, I might feel really bad if it's like, all I can do is get dressed and make sure my kids get their assignments done. And so really what you need to be looking at is what represents my best today, because my best on Monday probably isn't going to look like my best on Friday. And if we can exercise some self-compassion instead of comparing ourselves, we say, I'm going to give it all I've got, and that is going to be good enough.
When do you know, or when should it be something that goes off that says, I need to talk to someone because something's just not right? Because it is such a different experience that we're going through right now, and things are changing a lot. So how do we know when we need to talk to someone to try to sort out what's best for us, and what is our best?
Oh, that's a really good question. The first kind of area that I think about is the amount of time that the activity is either taking up psychologically or physically. So if we go to the eating or the exercise, if I am exercising 3 or 4 hours a day and I'm not an Olympic athlete or something like that, and I am, not engaging in activities that I might typically engage in, like spending time with friends, or I am staying up extra late because I want to get that 3rd or 4th hour in, then that has altered my typical behavior, and it is taking up, my time in such a way that I'm not able to live comfortably and kind of practice all things in moderation. So that's a hint. If I'm thinking about it, so even if I'm not engaging in it, and this is something that I see a lot with people who struggle with body image and eating, if I'm thinking about what I ate, was it good, was it bad, how it makes me feel, that's another sign. So distress beyond what you're able to manage and talk out, probably a good indicator that you need extra help from outside of kind of your social circle to get a new perspective, get some ideas on kind of where is this coming from and what might I do to shift into a more healthy pattern.